Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting Australian Indian Radio's daily Facebook Live update. Hey, it's wonderful to have your company. Good to see you. And how's your day going so far? Well, it's looking pretty good outside, but let's take a very quick look at the weather and see what today has got in store for us. With that, we'd like to welcome Dilraj.
Good morning everyone. Weather forecast for the rest of Thursday is a maximum of 24 degrees. Brisbane area is mostly sunny and windy with dust haze. Winds westerly 30 to 45 km per hour, becoming light in the evening. Chances of rain are 0%. Fire danger is very high. Sun protection is recommended till 2:30 p.m. UV index predicted to reach 6, that is high. Till tomorrow, stay safe and have a good day. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And right now, let's take a look at some of the news. But before we do that, the breaking news is that a coronavirus health alert has been issued for Brisbane Cafe after a woman tested positive. She's not here, she's gone, but she left the country and she's gone to Japan. But she came via Sydney and she did stop by at a cafe. So, that's what we know so far, is that the urgent contact tracing and coronavirus testing is underway after a woman tested positive for COVID-19 in Japan after flying into the country from Brisbane. Therein goes that problem that we always said, that people should be tested even before they leave. It should be mandatory at every airport, which I've been saying for a long, long time. So the key points are: the woman twice tested negative to COVID-19 while in Sydney quarantine. A public health alert has been issued for patrons of Brisbane Cafe, the Jam Pantry. The woman returned from Sydney to Brisbane on Virgin flight VA 962 on 17th. And when she left for Japan, and that's where they found her, that, she tested positive. And the latest news that has come out is that the worker at Brisbane Youth Detention Centre has tested positive to coronavirus. So this will have serious consequences, as we know. Things were getting back to normal right here in Brisbane, but once again in Queensland. This is why the Premier has been keeping the border very tight. A worker at Brisbane Youth Detention Centre, a woman working in Brisbane Youth Detention Centre in Waikol, which is in city's west, has tested positive to coronavirus. Queensland Premier Anastasia, she will be going live today. And we will try and see if we can bring her onto the show. And the centre of the phase to mask on the Monday. However, everyone entering the facility, including the staff, must have health screens and temperature checks. It comes as authorities trace the context of a separate case that was confirmed yesterday, which is that woman who took that flight. So 2 cases there, and it's not a very, very good sight. But what do you do? So that's the latest news in there. And the other news is about that boat that's capsized in Moreton Bay. And as we know that the 2 men who died in a boat that capsized off Moreton Bay in Brisbane, police say the 2 men were the only 2 on the small boat, and a passing yacht witnessed that boat overturning, and there were little kids who actually watched this boat capsize, and they took the 1 man aboard, but later he died in hospital. Police said that the alarm was raised by a passing yacht around 1:30 p.m. When Brisbane Water Police and rescue helicopter arrived at the scene, 1 man was being treated aboard that yacht. 1 man drowned while the 2nd man was flown to PA hospital, where he later died. So that's not a very good start to the morning. And let's take a look at the clip of when that actually happened right there in Moreton Bay. Inspector David Candale said information given to police suggested the men were the only one on the boat when it capsized. And at this point in time, emergency services have deployed the area conducting a search. But at this stage, it's only going to be the 2 males involved in the incident. And unfortunately, they have both passed away. So that's the latest news from there. Well, right now, let's look at the other breaking news is about the vaccine and what's going to happen with the vaccine. Here's our Prime Minister at the centre of research.
G'day, I'm here with Professor Kelly and John Alexander, the member for Bennelong, here in North Ryde at AstraZeneca, where we've been able to come to an agreement to ensure that Australia can be in the leading pack of getting vaccines for the coronavirus to all of our population. Now, this is a great spark of hope. There's more trials to be undertaken. It'll be manufactured here in Australia, but this is a tremendous partnership that we've been able to form, and it's going to ensure that we have hope to get to the other side of this terrible pandemic. It won't be the only agreement we enter into, but it is the first of our agreements as part of a broader strategy to ensure that Australia gets the vaccines, all 25 million of us, as well as supporting our partners in the Pacific and in Southeast Asia. So this is a watershed day and another very important step forward as we are moving in.
During that time frame should come forward and get tested. Anyone who is at the jam pantry during the rest of the day who develops any symptoms at all in the next 14 days should, like any Queenslander of course, come forward and immediately get tested. Then people who live in that Morningside Bulimba area, at this stage we don't believe that she went to any other venues for any significant period of time, so there is really no concern there. But again, if anyone who lives in that area becomes unwell with any symptoms, they should come forward and get tested. And Metro South Hospital and Health Service is putting in place additional hours for all of their clinics to enable that testing to occur. So we believe that the risk from her is very low. We're not sure where she's acquired the infection, but we believe that risk is very low. Now, the second case, so that won't count as a case in Australia because it's been diagnosed in Japan. It will be counted as a case in Japan, but we, of course, are managing the time that she was here. Now, the second case is a lady in her 70s who lives in the Ipswich area. And she developed symptoms, we believe, on the 10th of August, although that is all being clarified. We only got the result for her late last night. So we're just working through with her all her contacts at the moment. But she has worked at the Brisbane Youth Detention Centre, and she worked there for 5 shifts while she was in that infectious period. So we go back, remember, 2 days prior to when symptoms first developed, so from the 8th of August. So at this stage, we're working with the centre to test all of their residents. They have approximately 130 youth in detention there, and all of the staff. There's over 500 staff. Plus, we'll be going through whether there have been any visitors during that time period, and whether, of course, there have been any residents who've moved in and out of the facility during that time, to test them for 2 reasons. One, whether they've got the infection now, possibly from this lady, or to try and see if we can find out where she might have contracted the infection. At this stage, we're not aware of any venues that she's been to that those young women who went down to Melbourne, that cluster of 5, have been to during the period. But that's the work that we'll now be doing very thoroughly over the rest of today to work out all of her contacts, where she's been and where she might have got this infection. So there are 2 cases that we're just working through all of the contacts and where people might have been and who might have been infected. Now, while we do that, of course, it is very important that anyone who develops any symptoms, has any symptoms, comes forward immediately at any time and gets themselves tested and isolates themselves until they get results. That is really important. We don't know when our next case might appear in our community, and the best way to defend against it is for people to get tested as early as possible and to not go out in the community and not go to work while they're unwell. The other thing is that we do have to maintain that social distancing, because that's what will protect us from seeing a spread from any cases. And again, we don't know where these cases might end up. And the third is that people don't go to areas where we know there are large numbers of cases. So that's New South Wales, Victoria and overseas. And we are still seeing Queenslanders, for many different reasons, travelling interstate. This is not the time to travel interstate. Everyone should reconsider their need to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Premier. Good morning, everyone. So you've already heard the Brisbane Youth Detention Centre at Wacol is in lockdown. Last night, we were advised by Queensland Health that a staff member had tested positive to COVID-19. We've been practising and we've been workshopping and, of course, testing our systems since COVID first came to light. So I'm very confident that we're doing everything we can to make sure that all of the staff, all of the young people, visitors, families and friends are supported. Can I just make a couple of quick points, some facts? Personal protective equipment has been issued to all staff. They've been trained in how to do that. Personal protective equipment will also be provided to young people, has been provided to young people out there on the centre. I've never seen more health professionals at the Brisbane Youth Detention Centre than there is out there today. Any new admissions to the centre will not be accepted. Any new admissions to the centre, of course, will not be accepted. Can I ask people to stay away from the Youth Detention Centre? We have police out there doing what they do best, helping us keep people away. The best thing we can do is let health get in there and work with us to make sure we have the safest possible environment for the community. Just a couple of other quick facts, if I can, please. There will be no court appearances. There will be no education instruction at the centre today. We have plans in place, of course, for young people to be given support in terms of education, health, contact with family, and those processes are being put in place. It's a virtual world that we live in now, so we'll work through that today and over the coming days to make sure that we provide the best support we can to the young people that are there, but importantly, staff, family and friends. Some other facts: there's 127 young people out at the Brisbane Youth Detention Centre today. 110 of those young people are male, 17 are female, and the ages range from 13 years and 6 months upwards. There's about 500...
So, ladies and gentlemen, there you are, the latest news that has come out about the two events. The first one, as Dr. Jeanette Young said, cannot be counted as a case in Queensland because that case got detected in Japan. So when she left Sydney, she had undergone the test and she had tested negative, and that's why I think she was given the clearance to fly, and she passed through Brisbane en route to Japan. And that's where she got tested. And the other case is the Youth Detention Centre, which we just saw through the breaking news. And I'm glad that we could join that live streaming with the Premier, and we've got those updates that are happening there. So again, as she has mentioned, and the word of caution is that, if you're in doubt, just don't go out anywhere, or if you can help it, and if you don't really have to, unless there's a compelling and compassionate reason, don't go out anywhere for the time being, at least. Look at what's happened in Victoria. So all it needs is 1 or 2 cases, and then all of a sudden it starts spreading. And we have been able to manage that quite well up to now. So, let's keep it that way. And as the Premier said, and as the Health Department has said, that it is very important for every one of us to play our part and our role. I know the community is eager to start getting people together once again. People are starting small gatherings. Of course, they say the social distancing is observed. But I don't think they are, not many times, because people do slip, and all you need is that one slip and that's it, and it starts again. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, a plea to each and every one of you is please take care, be careful, and always take heed of the notices that have been sent out, and take care, because if we don't, then it will take us much longer than anticipated to get back to normality and get back onto the trek, as they mentioned. So, those two general cases that have been brought to us. And of course, we've heard from our Prime Minister as to what it could be, if we didn't, of course, go through and do all the right things that we really have to. So, moving on, let's go to and have a look at some of the events that are taking place right here. So, the key things are now, looking at the numbers, that Queensland, the numbers are 1,092. Well, those numbers might be changing soon. Recovery rate is 1,079, 6 recorded deaths. Australia-wide, 23,993 cases and 15,241 recoveries and 450 deaths. And confirmed cases worldwide. Yesterday we said 20. So today it's 22.2 million. And recovery is 14.2 million, 783 deaths that have been recorded. So it's not good. It's not looking good. And the other breaking news that has just come through, well, there's more to come, but Qantas has recorded a $2 billion loss, with the coronavirus pandemic slashing its full year revenue by 21%. The airline says its underlying profit, excluding big one-off cost, was 124 million, but overall the loss is 2 billion. It is not paying dividends in order to preserve its cash during the COVID-19 crisis. More to come, of course. With a loss like that, how can anyone pay a dividend? The other news is that Apple has made a record-breaking profits this year. We don't have all the facts and figures right here, but it's in the trillion. That's right. It came as a news break this morning. Unfortunately, we could not get the clip ready. It wasn't available by the time we got on air. So there you are. And of course, we have looked at that point, where the two men died in that capsized boat in Moreton Bay, while there were kids and other passengers on board our yacht who witnessed that. So, coronavirus and the testing, at what stage do you get? What symptoms do you have? How do you recognize it? All right, maybe I should get tested. As the general rule of thumb is that everyone should get tested. If in doubt, please get tested. But let's take a quick look at what the symptoms may be and how and why we should get tested.
Testing is our main defence against the coronavirus, and the earlier you get tested, the better. So it's critical that you recognise the very first symptoms of COVID-19, but sometimes they're not what you'd expect.
We don't really know exactly in what order symptoms present with COVID. Although fever, cough and shortness of breath may be the most common symptoms, if 10 or 15% of patients present with COVID, if we now have several thousand cases in Melbourne, there will be presentations with headache and there will be presentations potentially with conjunctivitis.
Dr Carmel Crock is head of the emergency department at the Victorian Eye and Ear Hospital, and they've had 2 patients who've given them a nasty surprise.
So we had 2 patients present to the Eye and Ear Emergency Department recently with earache and pain on the side of the head, so headache, and they were seen by our ear, nose and throat doctor, who ruled out an ear cause of the pain, and they were then referred to see the eye doctor as well, who tried to rule out eye causes for the headache. One of the patients had a preoperative COVID test, which was positive. So then we saw another case about 48 hours later. And again, that patient, we actually referred for COVID testing, and the COVID testing was positive.
The trouble was that because they didn't meet the testing criteria for COVID-19, at least one of these patients hung around the emergency department for some time rather than being isolated.
These patients came in, they were questioned at triage as to the COVID questions, but they didn't answer positively to any of the COVID questions. So then they're just in the normal emergency department, sitting, waiting, being dilated, moving around the department.
The other symptom that an eye hospital sees a lot of is conjunctivitis, eye inflammation.
In the international literature, COVID can present with conjunctivitis. It means that at the Eye and Ear Hospital, we've been really particular with our PPE around patients with conjunctivitis in case that's the first presentation of COVID.
If you look at the testing criteria put out by the Department of Health and Human Services in Victoria, headache and other non-respiratory symptoms aren't enough on their own to make you eligible for a test. You also need to have been in contact with a confirmed case or have just returned from overseas or be a health or aged care worker.
I think we have to be really humble about it, and I think we have to be open to changing our practice very rapidly.
730 asked the department why some known symptoms of COVID-19, such as headaches, aren't enough on their own to allow people to have a test. It did not respond to that question, but in a statement said, and I quote, "Testing criteria are continually being reviewed." So what?
As mentioned, that testing criteria is constantly being reviewed, but as I said before, that if you are in doubt, please go and get yourself tested. It is always for the better. Remove all doubts, as they say. Well, right now it's time for a very quick commercial break.
ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी 1989 से लेकर अब तक का विश्वसनीय और माननीय ब्रिस्बेन का रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। उषा चंद्रा, जो कि ग्लोबनेट की डायरेक्टर है, अपने ग्राहकों को ईमानदार और एथिक सर्विसेज देती हैं। अगर आप ब्रिस्बेन की प्रॉपर्टी में पूंजी लगाना चाहते हैं और आप चाहते हैं कि आपकी प्रॉपर्टी को प्रोफेशनली मैनेज किया जाए, तो आप आज ही कांटेक्ट कीजिए उषा चंद्रा को। लैंडलाइन नंबर है 38654466 और मोबाइल नंबर है 0419775416। और आप प्रॉपर्टी की अधिक जानकारी और करंट अपडेट्स के लिए हमारी वेबसाइट पे लॉगिन कर सकते हैं। हमारी वेबसाइट है www.globnetreality.com.au। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी आपका अपना लोकल रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। हमारा पता है ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, शॉप नंबर 5, 2281 Sandgate Road, Bundall, Queensland. Globenet Reality. Real estate is our world.
Of course, real estate is their world, and that's what they do, and that's what they do best. Well, right now, let's take a look at, we've now seen the symptoms. Of course, we've seen that, those two reports of what's happened in Brisbane. But and we've also looked at why and when do you go and get yourself tested and what would be the symptoms be. But what is life like in Melbourne's second lockdown? Maybe tomorrow we'll get someone live from there and have a chat to someone about what it is like to be in Brisbane. Just when Melburnians could see the light at the end of the tunnel, with restrictions easing, a dramatic drop in COVID-19 cases meant that they were plunged into stage 4 restrictions. For some, it was the tipping point. Jobs were lost, businesses closed, with a curfew on travel restrictions. It's very different life as compared to the other parts of the country. Well, this goes the most livable city. So let's take a look at what life is like in Melbourne at the moment.
The atmosphere in Melbourne is very sombre. There's no one in the streets. I've never seen Melbourne like this before. I mean, we walk the dog, there's no one around, there's no cars around. So this is my second stint of being off work due to the coronavirus. The first time my boss chose to close the salon due to safety reasons, and obviously the second time the government has closed us down.
Hairdresser Debbie Wood is in stage 4 lockdown with her daughters at their home in southeast Melbourne.
I haven't been cheating. I'm on the JobKeeper at the moment, so with 4 kids, it's not a lot, but I suppose it's better than some people who don't have anything. It's not just myself, it's dealing with the 4 girls' emotions when they get upset because they can't see their friends or they can't do their activities.
Debbie has worked at the same hairdressing salon for 19 years. As businesses interstate started reopening, Melbourne salons were shut down again.
It's just a waiting game, like every other small business around, just waiting and see if they can get back on their feet or not. or 6 weeks ago, I popped these plants in just to keep myself busy so I didn't get so bored and down. So they've now grown. And,
Debbie's very close to her extended family, but they live more than 5 kilometres away, so for now her only contact is online.
You're worrying about tomorrow. Am I going to be able to feed my kids next week? Am I going to be able to pay the rent next week? So it's very stressful. It's on my mind 24/7. All right. Do you need a hand or you're on track?
I'm on track.
You're on track, yeah? So you've done everything you need to today and this is just extra?
Yeah.
What I'm noticing with my patients is a tremendous sense of uncertainty. You know, that where am I going to be in 3 to 6 months? I think that it's...
Well, definitely there is that uncertainty because no one actually knows what's going to happen and how long it might be. And so, well, right now let's go overseas and take a look at what's happening around the world. Well, as I mentioned yesterday, that the Belarusian opposition leader is addressing the EU leaders, and Svitlanka says that she is ready to lead Belarus if given the chance. Let's see what she had to say when she addressed the EU leaders.
Honourable leaders of Europe, for the second week in a row, my nation is fighting peacefully for its constitutional right to elect its leaders. The August 9th elections were neither fair nor transparent. The results were falsified. People who went out to defend their vote in the streets of their cities all across Belarus were brutally beaten, imprisoned, and tortured by the regime desperately clinging onto power. Hundreds were injured. At least 2 people lost their lives. This is taking place right now in the middle of Europe. I call on you not to recognize these fraudulent elections. Mr. Lukashenko has lost all the legitimacy in the eyes of our nation and the world. In order to facilitate the peaceful transition of power in my country, I have initiated the National Coordination Council of Belarus. It will lead the process of the peaceful transition of power via dialogue. It will immediately call for a new, fair and democratic presidential elections with international supervision. Honourable leaders of Europe, I call on you to support the awakening of Belarus. I call on all countries to respect the principles of international law. I call to respect the sovereignty of Belarus and the choice of Belarusian people.
So there's her plea to the leaders of EU, and she says she is ready to lead the country, and of course that the transfer of power could be via a dialogue and never through protest. I think that's a very good angle to take. Now, Wuhan in China, where this coronavirus is said to have originated, what President Trump refers as the China virus. So, the epicenter where it all began, what's happening there right now? Right now they're having a big, massive pool party in Wuhan. While we are here in lockdown, they're having a massive pool party that's right in the epicenter of where it all began, Wuhan in China. And they're having there's no social distancing there, so, they're just having that massive pool party. Well, now to the US. And Bill Clinton urges voters to back Joe Biden. Former Democratic President Bill Clinton has urged Americans to vote for Joe Biden, saying Donald Trump has mishandled the COVID-19 pandemic and the buck never stops with him. I remember that when the pandemic came about, he said, oh yeah, it will pass away like everything else, it will go away. But let's hear from Bill Clinton, see what he has to say on that situation.
Good evening. A presidential election is the world's most important job interview. At the end, we hire a leader to help us solve problems, create opportunities, and give our kids better tomorrows. That's a tall order this year, with the COVID-19 outbreak on a path to killing 200,000 people and destroying millions of jobs and small businesses. How did Donald Trump respond? At first, he said the virus was under control and would soon disappear. When it didn't, he was on TV every day bragging on what a great job he was doing, while our scientists waited to give us vital information. When he didn't like the expert advice he was given, he ignored it. Only when COVID exploded in even more states did he encourage people to wear masks. By then, many more were dying. When asked about the surge in deaths, he shrugged and said, "It is what it is." But did it have to be this way? No. COVID hit us much harder than it had to. We have just 4% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's COVID cases. Our unemployment rate is more than twice as high as South Korea's, 2.5 times the United Kingdom's, more than 3 times Japan's. Donald Trump says we're leading the world. Well, we are the only major industrial economy to have its unemployment rate tripled. At a time like this, the Oval Office should be a command center. Instead, it's a storm center. There's only chaos. Just one thing never changes: his determination to deny responsibility and shift the blame. The buck never stops there. Now you have...
And of course, the buck never stops there, as he rightfully said. So, it is a sad case of, when he puts the figures like that, the population and, of course, the economy going down, and the COVID numbers, the number of cases that are still growing and not being able to get it under control. But elections underway. Well, in another news, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez nominates Bernie Sanders for U.S. president. The New York senator has given 60 seconds to speak her message to the Democratic National Convention. Let's see what she had to say.
Good evening, bienvenidos, and thank you to everyone here today endeavoring towards a better, more just future for our country and our world. In fidelity and gratitude to a mass people's movement working to establish 21st century social, economic, and human rights, including guaranteed health care, higher education, living wages, and labor rights for all people in the United States. A movement striving to recognize and repair the wounds of racial injustice, colonization, misogyny, and homophobia, and to propose and build reimagined systems of immigration and foreign policy that turn away from the violence and xenophobia of our past. A movement that realizes the unsustainable brutality of an economy that rewards explosive inequalities of wealth for the few at the expense of long-term stability for the many, and who organized a historic grassroots campaign to reclaim our democracy. In a time when millions of people in the United States are looking for deep, systemic solutions to our crises of mass evictions, unemployment, and lack of health care, en el espíritu del pueblo and out of a love for all people, I hereby second the nomination of Senator Bernard Sanders of Vermont for President of the United States of America.
So there you go. That's that nomination. And of course, with the election coming on, we'll be covering as much as we can and bringing to you some of the relevant points and points of interest that might be for our listeners and viewers. Well, right now, let's take a very quick look at the upcoming events. And if you have any event that you would like to have included in our program, we would quite gladly do that for you. All you need to do is just send us the information and we'll include that, as we know that there are some functions and events that have started. But once again, there's a lot of precaution that needs to be taken. And there's a lot that are planned online. And of course, we have seen that there's a number of webinars that are taking place and everyone is taking part in those webinars, and that is good to see that that is happening, because otherwise everyone would be going to the functions and events, and as we have seen in the case that all it takes is just one case, and then of course the spread begins, and once that begins, then it's very hard again to control that, because it's always better to prevent it than to try and control that later on. So ladies and gentlemen, if you have any function or event, webinar or any virtual event as well, or whatever you might have, you'd like to share with other people, we'd like to bring you onto the show. And of course, you can also join in the conversation, and we can, of course, do that live from here for you, and we can bring you in to the studio on many different ways. We can get you via the phone, we can get you in here via our video link as well, or you could even send us your recorded message, which we gladly play and include in the show. And the latest issue of Brisbane Indian Times is out, and if you can't find a copy, please go to your nearest outlets, and if you really need to check that out, and if you can't get to a store, and if you can't find a hard copy, please give us a call and we'll gladly guide you to the nearest distribution point, which is open at this point in time. As we know, some of our distribution outlets might not be open, or might be open on a restricted manner at this point in time. So ladies and gentlemen, with that, you must stay in touch, and thank you so much for joining in onto the show today once again. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, I'd like to thank you all for joining in, and it's been wonderful having your company. Until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me, and stay safe, look after yourself, and don't go out if you don't really have to.